All right, so we've talked about these first three here. Um, possession makes more sense. A heart, the heart belonging to the prophet versus a prophetic heart, and then the law or the instruction belonging to the king rather than royal law, though both are possible there. Royal law would be the more adjectival version. But down here on number three, this certainly makes more sense as holy clothing. That would be an adjectival translation versus clothing belonging to holiness. This next one here, number four, we've got devar, and we can see that this is in construct because the absolute form of devar would be dalit kametz, beit kametz, resh. Here we've got that shortened form of dalit shava, beit patach, resh. So this is word of. Now the definiteness, once again, of the construct depends on the definiteness of the absolute. Here we've got the definite article on the absolute, so devar is also definite. The word of the prophet. So the word belonging to the prophet would be the possessive translation. Or you could come up with an adjectival translation if you were to say something like the prophetic word. So again, both of those are possible. They make sense depending on the context that you're in. That will always sort of be the deciding factor, is which makes more sense in your context. Here we don't really have any context, so you could go either way. Number five, we've got Navi Haaretz. Navi here, this is in construct. The absolute form would be Nun Kametz, Beit Hirik Yod Aleph. And so here we've got Nun Shava. So that tells us we are in construct. Haaretz is obviously absolute because a construct won't have a definite article on it, which haaretz does. Again, the definiteness of the construct depends on the definiteness of its absolute. Here, haaretz is definite by the definite article, so navi is definite. The prophet of the land. This one I'm not sure how you would translate haaretz into an adjectival equivalent. In English, you might say something like the earthy prophet, but that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And I'm not sure you have an equivalent Hebrew adjective that you could point to. So this is almost certainly possession. The prophet belonging to the land. That is the prophet of this specific land is what it's talking about here. All right, number six, we've got Zevach Hayom. Zevach, again, is another construct that looks identical to its absolute. The segolets do not change, at least when you've got two short vowels. They do not change their form when they go into construct. Luckily, we have the makef. You can think of it as a Hebrew hyphen. The makef joining these two that indicate that Zevach is in construct. The definiteness of Zavach, the construct, is determined by the definiteness of its absolute. Hayom is absolute because it has the article, we know that. And so because Hayom is definite, Zavach is also definite. We've got the sacrifice of the day. Now, Hayom is also used to express what we in English would express by the word today. So this day, you would say Hayom. So this is either the daily sacrifice, that would be an adjectival translation, or a possessive translation would be the sacrifice for today, or the sacrifice belonging to today, or simply today's sacrifice. I would probably lean toward today's sacrifice without context. Possessive is just more common than adjectival, I think, and so it's probably the safer translation. But I wouldn't be surprised if this could be translated as the daily sacrifice for the adjectival form. Number seven, we've got Yad Hanar. Yad here is the construct form next to the absolute Hanar. And so because Na'ar is definite, the absolute is definite, so is the construct. The hand of the servant, or the hand of the boy, or the hand of the youth. All of those are possible translations of Na'ar. All right, so Yad Na'ar, the hand of the boy. This probably is not going to be translated well adjectively. You could try to manipulate it with something like the serving hand or the servile hand or something like that. But this is most likely possession, the hand belonging to the servant or the boy. All right, number 8, we've got mishpachat ha'ain. And so this patak tav ending is characteristic of a feminine singular construct. Mishpachat comes from mishpacha. Mishpacha means family or clan. The definiteness of the construct is determined by the definiteness of its absolute. Here the absolute aim has the article, so it is definite. Therefore the construct is definite. The family of the mother. This does not make much sense translated adjectively. Maybe something like the motherly family, but that seems awkward. So this is most likely a possessive use of the construct, the family belonging to the mother or the mother's family. Number 9, we have milchemet. This is the construct form of milchama. Milchemet Adonai is going to translate as battle of Yahweh. But again, the definiteness of the construct battle is determined by the definiteness of its absolute. Now here, Yahweh or Adonai does not have the definite article, but it doesn't need the definite article. Yahweh is a personal name, which makes it a proper noun. And proper nouns are definite by default. All right, so because this is definite being a proper noun, that makes milchama, the construct, definite as well. So we translate this as the battle of the Lord, or the battle of Yahweh, or the battle of Adonai. Finally, number 10, we've got Ish Ha Elohim. Ish is one of those monosyllabic with an unchangeably long vowel words. So because it is unchangeably long and it's monosyllabic, it is not going to reduce its vowel at all or shorten its vowel in the construct form. It's going to look identical whether it's construct or absolute. However, since we've got a noun right next to another noun, and this second noun has the definite article, it's most likely here that instead of just a man God, it's much more likely that we've got a construct relationship here. A man of God. Now, because God, Ha-Elohim, is definite, man here is also definite. So we would translate this as the man of God. Now, it might be possible to translate this adjectively if we turn God into an adjective. And the way we might do that is the godly man. That might be an appropriate translation here for Ish Ha-Elohim, and that would be the adjectival translation. But the safer of the two, absent any context, is probably going to be the man of God, that is to say, the man who belongs to God, possessive. All right. Any questions on C as I move down here to section D? See here we've got the difference between attributive and predicative adjectives. Again, the thing to keep in mind when you're trying to determine whether a construction is attributive or predicative. If the adjective disagrees in definiteness with its noun, that's going to be predicative. It disagrees with the definiteness, it's going to be predicative. And if it agrees, attributive, agrees with the definiteness of its noun, then it's going to be attributive. All right? Secondarily, another sort of helpful way to distinguish these is often, this is nowhere near as reliable as the definiteness determination, but oftentimes if the adjective comes after its noun, so here, ha-kedoshim comes after ha-kohanim. If the adjective comes after its noun, it's often attributive. And if the adjective precedes kedoshim ha-kohanim, the adjective precedes its noun, it's often predicative. So those are just some things to keep in mind as we go through here. We've got ha-kohanim, ha-kedoshim. The adjective comes after. It also agrees with its noun indefiniteness, so it's going to be attributive. Gender and number is going to be masculine plural for both. Number 2, we've got kedoshim, ha-kohanim. Here the adjective precedes its noun, and it disagrees in definiteness. The noun has the article, the adjective does not. So that's going to be predicative use, and again, they're both masculine plural as far as gender number goes. Number 3, we've got yashar precedes its noun, and it also disagrees in definiteness. So that's going to indicate a predicative use, and these are both masculine singular. So this would be the way is straight, or the path or the road is straight. And let me take a moment to comment on yashar here as well, because there's something known as the root fallacy in exegesis. The root fallacy is when you kind of insist that a specific instance of a word must be related to the root meaning of that word, or that the root meaning of the word is the meaning that the word has in every instance. That's a fallacy because words are used in a variety of ways, and they're not always used the way that the root might be used. A related fallacy is called the etymological fallacy, and that has to do with the idea that the etymological fallacy insists that the historical meaning of the word must be present in every instance of the word. So, for example, if you've ever run into D.A. Carson's book, Exegetical Fallacies, one way that I think he illustrates this is the English word nice. So the English word nice usually refers to either polite or enjoyable, something like that. But the word itself, the English word nice itself, etymologically developed from a word that means simple or stupid. And so the idea would be, if the etymological fallacy were appropriated here, if someone demanded that the historical meaning of a word be expressed in every instance of that word, then that would be like saying that the word nice means stupid or simple. That's not what it means. The word yashar is often subject to the root fallacy or the etymological fallacy, because not the etymological fallacy so much, but the root fallacy, because the root of yashar means straight, and oftentimes yashar, because it means straight, is a way of, it also has this connotation of right or true. And you can get righteous from that idea. But obviously a righteous road, roads don't have moral quality. So here straight is the better translation of yashar for haderic than righteous or right or something like that. You could argue that this might mean the correct road or the correct path. That's possible, but you would want some context here. When yashar occurs with haderic, it's much more likely to be referring to the straightness of the road than whether the road is the correct road or not. Now, I might be overstating the case there. Maybe it's not a ton more likely. Maybe they're relatively even. But I want you to understand why yashar can mean both straight and right, is because the idea of being right has to do with conforming to some norm and or conforming to some rule, which is why we call a ruler because it measures and it determines whether something is straight or not. So these seemingly um, different meanings for yashar, straight versus right versus true, those sorts of things, they are related, and you have to understand in each instance, what word is it modifying? Is that word more likely to be called or to be described as straight, or is it more likely to be described as right? These are things that you have to keep in mind for any word, because many words, most words have multiple meanings. And oftentimes the best meaning for that word is going to depend on the other words in the context, not just what you want the word to mean in a given situation. So, anyways, rant over. Just wanted to take the opportunity to explain why yashar has some seemingly different meanings available. And I don't remember if we got all the way through here. So yashar is masculine singular, and this would be a predicative use. The road is straight, or you could say the road is right. You'd be more likely to say right here if this were attributive, the right road or the correct road. But here to say the road is straight seems like the better translation. Number 4, we've got ha-mizbeach, ha-tameh. Right? And so tameh here means impure. The adjective comes after its noun, so that's going to indicate attributive. We can double check that by seeing the agreement between the definiteness of the noun and its adjective. That is attributive. So both of these are going to be masculine singular, and they are an attributive. This would be the impure altar, or the unclean altar. Number 5, we've got zachenot, ha-torot. So zachenot, this is our adjective. It means old. Oops. And then we've got ha-torot is our noun, laws or instructions. Here the adjective precedes its noun, so that indicates predicative. And we also notice that it disagrees with its noun in definiteness. The noun has the article, the adjective lacks the article. Those two tell us that this is predicative. They're both feminine plural, but we would translate this as the laws or the instructions are old. All right, number 6, we've got ha'em ha-zachena. Ha'em is our noun. Ha-zachena comes after our noun, and it agrees in definiteness. That's going to be attributive. Both of these are feminine singular. This would be the old mother. Number 7, we have he'arim ha-geralot. Now I know that arim here looks masculine plural, but this is one of those, it's kind of like av, the plural of father is avot, fathers. That looks feminine plural, but avot is obviously masculine plural. Here, excuse me, the plural form of ir for city is orim. Sorry, not orim, arim. The plural is arim. And so even though it looks masculine singular, or I'm sorry, masculine plural, it's actually feminine plural because ir is feminine. And we know that it's feminine plural because the adjective never lies. The adjective always looks the gender that it is. And since this is feminine plural, we know that this one is feminine plural if they're modifying, if this adjective is modifying this noun, which it is. So again, here the adjective comes after its noun, and it agrees in definiteness. So that's going to be attributive, and both of these are feminine plural, despite the hirik yod mem ending on the noun. Number 8, we've got tova haaretz. Tova is our adjective. It precedes its noun, which indicates a predicative relationship, and that is confirmed when we see that it disagrees with its noun in definiteness. Haaretz has the article, tova lacks it. So this is predicative. This would be the land is good or the earth is good. I often caution students from using the word earth as a translation of eretz. It's not necessarily wrong, but you got to understand that when you say earth, most often when we hear someone in English say the word earth, the image that pops in our mind is probably like an image of the earth from space or something, like a picture of a globe, something like that. That was not the image that would have popped in the minds of ancient Israelites when they were using the word eretz or ha'aretz. So land is usually better. Of course, that's all dependent on context. Um, but when it says ha'aretz tovah, this is probably meaning the land is good. All right, number 9, we've got ha'avot ha'hechamim. Ha'avot ha'chachamim. Here we've got the adjective chacham in the masculine plural form. This means wise or skillful. It comes after its noun, the fathers, and it also agrees with its noun in definiteness. So what we've got here is the wise or the skillful fathers. This is an attributive construction. And even though avot has this Holam Vav Tav ending, both of these are masculine plural. Number 10, we've got Rasha'ah HaMishpacha. Rasha'ah is our adjective. It precedes its noun, and it also disagrees with its noun in definiteness. The noun Mishpacha has the article, the Rasha'ah does not. The Rasha'ah is the word for guilty or wicked. I also want to take a moment to distinguish for you between the word Rasha'ah, or Rasha in the masculine singular form, Rasha, which would be Resh Kametz, Shen Kametz, Ayin. Rasha is different from the word Ra or Ra'ah. When you see this Shen in here, this has to do with I don't want to limit it to legal, but it's certainly moral. Rasha is really related to guilt, someone who has done something wrong. Ra or Ra'ah really just means bad. We use it to mean evil, but evil has started to be used differently in English than it used to be. Evil just referred to, like, historically, it just referred to disaster. So Ra or Ra'ah, those words refer to something bad, something disastrous, something even dangerous. They don't necessarily refer to something guilty or wicked. So when you're translating Rasha and Ra'ah, make sure that you understand that these are different words and that Rasha has to do with guilt, whereas Ra'ah just means something bad or disastrous or even dangerous, but not necessarily wicked or guilty. Those are important words to distinguish. So here, with our adjective preceding its noun and disagreeing in definiteness, we have a predicative relationship. These are both feminine singular, as indicated by the comets hey. And so we get the family, mishpacha, the family is wicked. All right, if you have any questions on D here, let me know as I scroll down to E. All right, section E here is just parsing. So we've done this many times before. We're just practicing again. Again, what we're gonna kind of train ourselves on is this series of questions that we can ask of a verb to help us get at what parts are we looking at and what do these parts tell us about the pattern, conjugation, person, gender, number, and root. So the first question we ask is, how many letters does a Hebrew root have? And that will almost always be 3. Even when we get to what are called hollow verbs, where one of those 3 letters, find hollow verbs here, where one of those three letters is actually a vowel, it's still a vowel letter, okay? So when we ask, how many letters does a Hebrew root have? The answer is 3. How many do I have here? I have 4. Okay, well, which letter is most likely to be added as opposed to part of the root? Do we ever add dalet as a suffix? Never. What about aleph as a prefix? Well, that gets added in the imperfect conjugation. That is our 1cs prefix. So if I take that off, I'm left with pakad. Right, well, that is a root that I recognize. That's a root that I've learned. Pakad means to visit, to care for, to attend, something like that. And so this in the imperfect is, I'm going to translate this future. I'm also going to translate it 1cs, which in English, the pronoun for 1cs would be I. So I will visit or care for or attend. So the aleph right here tells us, first of all, the pattern is cow because that's all we've learned so far is cow. When we get into some of these other patterns, we'll talk about, usually it's the prefix letter that's going to indicate what pattern it is. The prefix letter and the theme letter. Theme vowel. We call this a theme vowel because it tells us what pattern it belongs to. We'll also refer to it as the R2 vowel, or the second root letter vowel. But all of that information will give us a clue as to the pattern when we learn about different patterns. So right now, all we've learned is cal. We can put that in. Conjugation, aleph indicates that it's imperfect. And the aleph also indicates 1cs. And so the root would be pakad. R2. Number 2, how many root letters does a Hebrew verb have? 3. How many do I have? Well, here if I count the shurek as a or as a vowel letter, I've got 5. So what's extra? Does Zion ever get added as a prefix? No. What about what's on the end? Does shurek ever get added as a suffix? Yeah, shurek is frequently added as a suffix. If I take that off, I'd still have 4 letters for the root, though. So maybe I have to take off not just the shurek, but the nun shurek. That would leave me with 3. And zakar is a root that I recognize. So what does the nun shurek, the nu suffix, what does that tell us about a verb? Well, the nu suffix, nun shurek, is used in the cal perfect for a 1CP form. So this nun shurek suffix tells me that I'm in cal perfect 1CP, which would mean we forgot. Zakar means forgot, so zakar is my root. Number 3, how many letters is a Hebrew root supposed to have? 3. How many do I have? I have 4. So what's extra? You know, shin never gets added as a suffix. What about nun as a prefix? Yeah, nun gets added as a prefix in the imperfect, which, by the way, that's why the imperfect is often referred to as the prefix conjugation. Because, for example, in the perfect, every single form other than the 3ms has a suffix added to it. So the perfect conjugation is sometimes referred to as the suffix conjugation because every form has a suffix added. Well, the imperfect is often referred to as the imperfect conjugation. The imperfect is often referred to as the prefix conjugation because every form of the imperfect has a prefix on it. So here, the nun prefix tells us we're in the prefix conjugation, which is imperfect, and the nun itself indicates 1CP. Excuse me. So if I take off the nun, I get dalet resh shin as my root. Darash, that is a root I'm familiar with. Darash itself means he sought or he inquired. And so need rosh would mean we will seek or inquire. Number 4, how many letters is a Hebrew root supposed to have? 3. How many do I have? I have 6. So I got a lot going on here. I got to figure out somehow what of these 6, which 3 belong to my root. So, how about starting at the front? Does tav ever get added as a prefix? Yeah, actually, tav does get added as a prefix in the imperfect. Tav is a prefix for the 3fs form. It's also a prefix for the 2ms form, but in both of those cases it doesn't have any suffix. And if we have a tav prefix with no suffix, then we've still got a lot of extra letters here. What about tav koth? Could tik be a prefix? No, tik isn't a prefix, so koth must be part of my root. So if I take the tav off, I've got some sort of conjugation here that has a tav prefix and a suffix on it. Well, the 2fs form of the imperfect has a tav prefix and a suffix, but the suffix is hirik yod, which is not what we have here. I don't see hirik yod anywhere. Other forms of the tav prefix with a suffix are the 3fp form and the 2fp form. And both of those happen to be identical, which is what we have here. In those cases, the suffix is na, which is what I have. I have a tav prefix and a na suffix. If I take those three letters off, I take off the tav from the beginning, I take off the na from the end, I'm left with kof, tav, bait. Is kof, tav, bait a Hebrew root that I'm familiar with? Yes, I've learned that as katav, he wrote. And so here we're in the imperfect, which would be something like he will write, except I've got a feminine plural form. Now I can't tell from this form whether it's third person, they will write, or second person, you will write. I can tell it's feminine, I can tell it's plural, but I can't tell without further context whether it's third person or second person. So I need to put here, first of all, cal imperfect, but I need to put 3/2 or 3 or 2 to indicate that it could be third or second person. I do know it's feminine plural because of the na ending. And I do know that the root is the root is kof, tav, bait. So this would be something like they will write or you will write, feminine plural. Number 5, we've got amadah. Right? So again, how many letters am I supposed to have in a Hebrew root? 3. What do I have here? I have 4. So again, usually what gets added to a root is going to be added to the beginning or the end. It's much more infrequent for something to be added to the middle. So here, if I'm checking the beginning and the end, is ayin ever used as a prefix? So that my root would be something like madah. No, ayin doesn't get used as a prefix. What about kametz he as a suffix? Now, certainly we will see verbs where kametz he is part of the root. They're called third he verbs. But kametz he gets added in the cal perfect to a third feminine singular form. So if we have katal, the third feminine singular form would be katala. And we have that kametz, shava, kametz pattern that we're used to seeing in the cal perfect 3fs. So that's what we have here. We take off the kametz he, we're left with amad. That's our root. Amad means he stood. And so here the 3fs form would be she stood. So we've got a cal perfect 3fs form of amad. Number 6, we're looking at shamu. All right. Again, we have 4 letters. What's extra? Is shen ever added as a prefix? No. So what about a suffix? Is shurik ever added as a suffix? Yes. Shurik gets added as a suffix with no prefix in the cal perfect 3CP. So what we've got here is a cal perfect 3CP form of shema, shen mem ayin. Shema means he heard or he listened to or he obeyed. So the 3CP form would be they heard or they listened to or they obeyed. Number 7, we've got tikrot. Tikrot. We've got 4 letters, so what's extra? Is tav ever added as a suffix? It is. Tav is added as a suffix with no prefix in the cal perfect second person singular. Now in the second person plural, it also adds a mem or a noon on the end. In the 2ms of the perfect, it's tav kametz, which we don't have here. But in the second feminine singular, it's just a tav, and it would be tav shava if we had a shava under the final root letter. But we have a tav here. So that could explain what's going on. If we take this tav off as a cal perfect 3fs, we're left with tav, kaf, resh. But there's a problem with that. If this were a cal perfect, our first root letter would have a kametz, and it doesn't. It has a hirik. So that doesn't make sense. This can't be cal perfect because the vowels don't line up. So what if the suffix tav is not what's added? What if instead what's been added here is a prefix tav? And so instead of having a tav suffix with the root tav, kaf, resh, instead we have a tav prefix with the root kaf, resh, tav. Well, as it happens, kaf, resh, tav is a root that we have learned. This is the root karat, which means to cut. All right, so when do we add a tav prefix? Well, in the imperfect conjugation, we add a tav prefix with no suffix, both to the 3fs form and the 2ms form. We also have a hirik prefix vowel in that situation, and that also explains why we would have a holum in R2, because in the imperfect, our theme vowel or our pattern vowel, our R2 vowel, is often holum or patach. So that's what we've got here is a cal imperfect, either 3fs or 2ms. So in person, you would write 3/2 or 3 or 2, and then in gender, you would write F or M or F/M to indicate third feminine or second masculine. Number 8, we're looking at shafat tem. Shafat tem. And again, we've got 5 letters, so what's extra? Hopefully at this point, that tem suffix is jumping out at you. This is that heavy double consonant suffix of the cal perfect 2ms. And if we take that off, we can see our 3-letter root, shafat. So if we parse this as cal perfect 2mp, I think I said 2ms earlier, 2mp, shafat means he judged. Shafat tem means you, masculine plural, judged. And so our root here is shen pei tet. Finally, number 9, we've got malach-ta. Malach-ta. Excuse me. So again, we've got 4 letters. What's extra? Is mem ever added as a prefix? So far, no. In the imperfect, we have not seen mem as a prefix. We will see later on that mem can be added to certain verbs as a prefix. But for now, that's not something we've seen, so it's probably part of the root. Plus, if we take the first 3 letters, malach, that is a verbal root that we've seen before. That is, he was king, or he ruled as king, or he reigned, or something like that. So what's extra here is this tav suffix. And we've got a kametz here, which indicates a 2ms of the cal perfect. So we've got cal perfect 2ms form of malach, mem lamed kaf, which means in this form, we would translate this as you ruled or you reigned as king, something like that. All right, we'll finish it up here with one of these translations. Obviously, you've got the translations here. You don't need me to translate it for you. But I'll just walk through the longest one here to kind of show you my process, especially early on in elementary Hebrew, for translating a chunk in Hebrew. A lot of people can parse and they can answer vocabulary, but when it comes to the translation, something doesn't click. It's hard to get all the words in the right order. So this is the basics of how to translate in Hebrew. You need to know what your main verb is, and you need to know what your subject is, and then you can figure out what the rest of the words are. Because in English, the core of a sentence is a subject and a verb. All right, so if you're going to translate into English, you need to know what your subject is and what your verb is. Generally speaking, in Hebrew, I expect the first word of the sentence to be the main verb. It won't always be that. It might only be that 60% of the time. But if you expect a verb, it will certainly help you identify a form that might look strange to you. This form may not look normal. You may look at this and wonder what to make of it. But if you expect it to be a verb, then you can say, well, maybe there's prefixes and suffixes here that I can get rid of to get down to a root. So for number 3, I see yishma'u, and I ask myself, if this is a verb, how many letters should it have? 3, as a root, that is. How many does it have? Well, it has 5, if you count the yod and the shurik. So what can I get rid of? Is yod ever used as a prefix? Yes, in the prefix conjugation, yod is used for third person masculine. Yod prefix with no suffix is 3ms. Yod prefix with a shurik suffix is 3mp. So if I take both of those off, I'm left with shen, mem, ayin, which shema is the word he listened to, or he heard, or he obeyed. That's in the Cal Perfect, 3ms. Well, here I'm in the Cal Imperfect, which indicates a future time, 3mp. So I should translate this, instead of he heard, I should translate this as they, masculine plural, will hear, or they will listen to. All right, so what is my subject? Well, right now I know it's third masculine plural, whatever it is. So I need to look for a noun here that's third masculine plural to match this verb. If you've got a second person verb or a first person verb, oftentimes you won't have an explicit subject. But when you have a third person verb, that's a great time for your subject to be made explicit. If it's second person or first person, you may have to determine the subject just from the verb form itself. Either I or we or you, something like that. But here, third person, I'm going to look for a subject. And the general word order, the common word order in Hebrew, is to go verb, then subject, then direct object. So let's assume that the next noun I run into is my subject. We've got they will listen to, or they will hear. Who will hear? Ha'amim. Okay, well, ha'amim is a noun. This is am. And it's in the plural form. So that would be masculine plural. That matches. Third masculine plural. The people will listen to, or the people will hear. That works great. But then I run into this adjective. Resha'a, or actually ha-resha'im. And I have to figure out what this adjective is modifying, if anything. If it's not modifying anything, then it's functioning substantively as a noun. But if it is modifying something, I need to figure out what that is. So how can I tell what it's modifying? Well, whatever it's modifying, it has to match in gender and number. And the gender and number here is hirik yod mem. That's masculine plural. So if this is modifying something, it's modifying something that's masculine plural. Now, of course, looking for another hirik yod mem is a good way to find masculine plural nouns in this sentence that it might be modifying. But remember, we saw avot above, and avot does not end in hirik yod mem, but it is masculine plural. So keep that in mind. Sometimes you'll have a noun that doesn't look masculine plural, but still is. So what nouns in this sentence are masculine plural? So far, we've only looked at yishma'u and ha'amim. But it just so happens that ha'amim is masculine plural. Does it make sense if I modify the people with the guilty ones or the wicked ones? The guilty people or the wicked people will hear or will listen to. That does make sense. Are there any other masculine plural nouns that this might be modifying? Well, et is a definite direct object marker. Kol is masculine singular. Adonai is masculine singular. Yom is masculine singular. And again, Adonai. So this is the only thing in this sentence it can be modifying. Is it possible that this is just a coincidence that both of these are masculine plural, but Rasha is functioning substantively, not modifying anything? If you tried to translate it that way, the sentence wouldn't make any sense. You'd have to say something like, the people will listen to, and you could say the wicked ones, but in English that would make this the definite direct object, and we know it's not the definite direct object. This is what marks the definite direct object. So it doesn't make any sense to have two substantives here functioning as the subject without a vav between them. Right? So in that case, this is almost certainly an attributive relationship here. And we know it's attributive because, first of all, the adjective comes after its noun, and the adjective agrees with its noun's definiteness. So here we translate this not as the people are wicked will listen, but simply the wicked people or the guilty people will listen to or will hear. The wicked people will hear what? Definite direct object. They will hear Kol Adonai. All right? So what is Kol Adonai? Well, Kol is the word for voice. Again, Kol is a monosyllabic word that has an unchangeably long vowel. So the construct form will not look any different from the absolute form. But thankfully we have this makef here indicating that Kol is in construct with Adonai. Voice of Adonai, or voice of the Lord, or voice of Yahweh. Now the definiteness of Kol, the construct, is determined by the definiteness of its absolute, Adonai. We talked before about how Adonai is definite by default because it's a proper noun. It's a personal name, so it's a proper noun, so it's definite by default. It doesn't even need a definite article. It's definite because it's a name, which means since it's definite, Kol is also definite. The wicked people will hear what? They will hear the voice of Adonai or Yahweh or the Lord. And then we've got another phrase over here that we have to figure out what this is doing. All right, so let's break it down. There's clearly two words here joined by a makef. What's this first word? Well, if I don't recognize bayom in and of itself, it's probably made up of parts. I mean, bayom could be a Hebrew word, but it's much more likely that this is the Hebrew word yom with the bait preposition on it. So the bait preposition can indicate location, in, at, something like that. It can indicate accompaniment with someone or something. It can indicate instrumentality, so the means by which something happens. Or it can indicate time. At a day, on a day, something like that. So it's probably time, since Yom is a time word, on day of Adonai, or on day of the Lord, or on day of Yahweh. But remember, Yahweh is definite, so Yom is definite. I know we don't have the definite article here. There's no patak dagesh indicating the definite article, but the construct doesn't take the definite article. Its definiteness is determined by the definiteness of its absolute. And so we get bayom, even without the article, meaning on the day of Yahweh or Adonai or the Lord, on the day of the Lord. This is a prepositional phrase modifying they will hear. When will they hear? On the day of the Lord. So the way to translate through here would be, again, in English we start with the subject. So even though Hebrew starts with the verb, in our English translation we want the subject first. The wicked people is our subject. The wicked people, then our verb, will hear, then our direct object. What will they hear? The voice of Adonai. When will they hear it? They will hear the voice of Adonai on the day of Adonai, on the day of the Lord. All right? So we'll go ahead and stop there. Daniel, if you have any questions, last chance, throw them in the chat. Otherwise, no problem. We'll see you next time. But that's kind of my methodology for translation. It's important to know that in English, we want to put the subject first, then the verb, then the direct object, and then any predicate modifiers like prepositional phrases, that sort of a thing. If you put the verb first, just because Hebrew has the verb first, you're going to get something like, they heard the wicked people. And in English, that would imply that the wicked people is the direct object, but it is not. They heard the wicked people the voice of the Lord on the day of the Lord. That doesn't make sense. You've now got like two different direct objects, okay? So remember, your subject in Hebrew is often after your verb. But in English, you need to move that subject to the front of your sentence, at the beginning of your sentence. And that's what's going to help you with your translation here. So, hope that's helpful. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to send them my way. And other than that, I hope you have a great week. We'll see you next time.